What's going on, guys? My name is Victor and welcome to my YouTube channel, which is dedicated to helping people navigate their spiritual awakening process. And every Friday I like to do a question and answer video where I can answer my subscribers' questions. They leave them in the comment section and I do my best to answer as many of them as I can. So here are the questions for this week. Also asked about binaural beats. Now, I have tried binaural beats a few times, but from what they are fundamentally is just a way to reach the meditative state faster than just on your own, because it works on a principle known as entrainment. So a binaural beat is just a specific frequency, and just by listening to it, your brain waves will naturally start to mimic it. So these binaural beats kind of represent like the theta and different meditative states of consciousness. And again, it's just kind of a no-brainer way of entering to these states of consciousness, which is fine. It's cool. I don't use it. I use this thing, a singing bowl. It's a big ass crystal singing bowl. You just hit it. Same idea. It gives off a pitch or a frequency. I listen to it, and it just kind of like dives me in very quickly into the meditative state. So rather than sit here for 20 minutes and meditate and say Om or whatever, I hit this like 3 times and let it just kind of take me into stillness. I just let the sound drift off. And within like 2 or 3 minutes, I'm like, boom, I'm like in a good state of being, man. In fact, I oftentimes try to do this a couple times before I make my video so I can come forth as clear as possible. Is this better than binaural beats? No. Are these things necessary? No. In fact, if anything, some might argue that they're, in a sense, a crutch. I believe everything has its place, but here's another way of looking at it. The one little downfall to this is, of course, we're in a state of becoming more self-empowered. So why need to depend on something to help to get into that state of consciousness? I like a mantra. I say so hum. There's nothing special about that. You can say any freaking sound you want, but you just sit there in silence and you breathe and you think about that mantra. I think about so hum. And you do this for 10 minutes a day, so hum, so hum. There's a cumulative effect where I can be out in public, and if I'm like feeling a little bit frazzled, I can just so hum in my mind. And because there's a rapport with that particular sound, that word in my mind represents a state of consciousness. It like you become faster at getting and achieving that state of consciousness that's associated with that sound. So there's kind of an investment with this other form of meditation. So I say do both. When you're short on time, who cares? Fucking bang a singing bowl, put on some binaural beats, great. But I would also invite you to consider trying something else where you can just enter that state on your own naturally. Somebody asked me about antidepressants, and she wondered if antidepressants, she's taking like a mild antidepressant, is that going to prevent her ascension? Is that going to screw up her awakening? And you know what? Most people in my situation would probably say yes. People who like are teaching about this stuff, talking about it, I would assume the general consensus is that, yeah, you got to get rid of those. You got to purify your diet, all that kind of stuff. And honestly, I don't believe that's the case at all. That's just my own opinion, though. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I believe that what matters is your opinions and your beliefs about that thing. Obviously, we live in a world of incredibly diverse world where what seems wild and unacceptable to one person is perfectly normal and brings peace and contentment to another. So you could say, wow, the antidepressant, it stifles it's an escape, but guess what? You haven't walked in this person's shoes. Maybe she just suffered some kind of fucked up loss and she can't even keep it together. Maybe she's got a house, she's got a mortgage, and maybe it is appropriate for her to take something temporarily to take the edge off so she can function in life. So it's very easy to judge and say, wow, you shouldn't be doing that. So in my opinion, ask yourself, what do you feel about this? Is this a way to avoid feeling certain feelings? Are you truly not quite ready to deal with the state of being you're going to be in absence of this antidepressant, or do you really believe this is actually something that is suitable and appropriate for you at this stage of your life and your awakening? Only you can answer that. But don't allow other people's judgmental opinions to sway you. You just ask yourself. There is no right or wrong. No thing is going to prevent your ascension, only your belief about it. I was also asked about Christ consciousness. Now, I don't have any formal religious upbringing. However, I have read over the past 8 years a lot about different religious texts, and about different like spiritual masters and just metaphysics as a whole, the enlightenment process. I read a lot about it, but that's not really, I don't think, why you're asking me. You're asking the wrong guy if you're looking for more of like a historical perspective on it. But my understanding is that Christ consciousness is just a term to describe the enlightened state of consciousness. It's not that it's separate from the awakened state. Like, are you familiar with Eckhart Tolle? He's a truly awakened human being living in this world right now. In my opinion, he's embodying the Christ consciousness. I believe we're all on the path towards the true embodiment of Christ consciousness. Christ even said, I don't remember the exact context, so please don't flame me if I'm like wrong, but there was someone who asked him about something, and he said, you will go on to do everything I'm doing and even more. And I think he foresaw this mass awakening, and we are going through this awakening. We're all becoming Christed. We're all becoming Buddhas. He wasn't saying, go and like follow me, I am the Christ and you are you. No, he's saying, be like me, act like me. I am an example of how you could be. You like my miracles? Great. Well, fucking wake up, and then you can do this yourself. Someone asked me about weight loss. They're having trouble losing weight, and they're fairly health conscious, and they exercise, and they've kind of been doing the same thing they've always done to maintain a certain weight, but for whatever reason, they're just not able to lose weight. And this would be hard for me to pinpoint exactly what it is. I can only speak from my own experience. But oftentimes, you will experience things that bother you, things that you don't like, that are kind of unique to you, like gaining weight might be a thing. You just despise the idea of hair loss for guys. It could be something like that as a way to kind of, well, it might have a few different reasons that you manifested a thing. One of them might be there's something in your lifestyle, something you're doing or thinking that is out of alignment with your true self, and this is a way to kind of bring light to that, bring attention to that. It could be just literally the energies. The energies sometimes create havoc in our bodies, and it's just so much for our bodies to handle. All this light energy. I mean, the idea of we are raising our frequency. That is a lot on the body, as you all know. I don't have to tell you that. So that very well could be what it is. However, with all that said, I was a personal trainer for 10 years, and I'll just tell you straight up, typically weight loss is a numbers game. So if any of you guys want to lose weight, here's what you do. You multiply your goal body weight times 11. You eat that amount of calories 6 out of 7 days. And on the 7th day, you eat you multiply your current weight times 15. And you eat that on that one day. I'm not going to get into why this works, but trust me, this will do it. This is how people get really ripped, just by following this simple numbers game. Eat healthy foods, eat enough protein, bam. And someone asked me just today, in fact, how, I'm hoping I'm understanding their question clearly, but how do you handle, once you first awaken and you start to become more and more increasingly aware of like the nature of things. And I talk about this in other videos about like how just the degree of negativity that exists in the world, just how controlling the governments and what the banks are and the corporations are, how self-serving they are, and just how the masses really are kind of living blindly, and it's been kind of set up that way to enslave them in a sense. And it's very hard when you first start to become aware of that to not be like furious, infuriated, afraid, resentful, just totally bitter, like you're disgusted with what you come to find out. And I think that's what she was asking, what I thought about that. And I'm not going to say that that's wrong to go through that. I went through that myself. In fact, I started telling people, warning people, and I realized that was not the best idea. But, as your consciousness expands, as you become more awake, you become more aware of all things. You don't just become more aware of of your spirit guides and angels and fairies and whatnot. You become aware of, just to the degree you become aware where you can connect with this other side of yourself, you also become more keenly aware of just how dark of a world we kind of live in. And again, it's startling, it's infuriating, but just kind of like, I don't know them all, but there's like this X amount of stages of coping with loss or something. And initially there's like denial. That's kind of what we are in for a while. Most people are in denial. And then there's like the anger and the resentment. That's kind of the stage I think you're referring to. And it's an inevitable stage. It's just a part of the journey, a part of the process that I wouldn't say is good or bad, or you should try to rush through. Just be with it. But eventually, I suspect most of you, if you're feeling this way, will come to more of a state of acceptance of it. You'll see the futility of being angry and like infuriated with the chemtrails and like the unhealthy food and the processed food and all that kind of stuff, because it doesn't, that anger, those emotions that come up in your resistance to that do not serve you, and they certainly do not serve the planet. And you'll eventually come to realize that, you know what? That desire to help and to serve will overrule those feelings of resentment and resistance. And you'll see again, wow, my resentment is preventing me from doing my role and my part in helping the whole. And it'll just be a kind of natural separation from those feelings, more of an acceptance. Now, the way I feel about, I'm not saying I don't still get triggered by things, but in general, I do have a complete acceptance and understanding for even the most evil things out there, the most crazy controlling things. And I do know that as long as I do my best to, as consistently as possible, stay aligned with my true core soul self, that is the best weapon resistance I can do. That is the best way to get at them, if that's your goal. But again, I believe you'll come out of the whole desire to see them crumble. You know, there's like these fantasies like watching the Illuminati become revealed and all imprisoned, and yeah, fuck them. That's kind of like allowing them to do what they want to do. Their goal is to keep us in these lower primal negative emotions so they can have dominion over people. But the way out, just like Gandhi would say, it's through love and acceptance and compassion, even for them. And through your love and compassion and understanding, which will just come naturally, you will be able to see it for what it really is. Just another way the whole has to potentially express itself for various learning circumstances. There's a lot of good that comes out of that. Someone asked me if I believe in evil. Like, I'm not really sure. You know, to me, evil is just a word. It's just a term to describe negative energy. And I would almost say negative is sort of like a judgmental way of looking at it. I'm just looking at it like negative energy, negative expression, you know, evil deeds. I see as just a manifestation of people who are living from the perspective of being completely severed off from their divine source, their divine nature. And from this pinched off source, you kind of are more like animalistic. You use your reptilian brain where you're more like me against the world. There's more like energies of like competition and scarcity. It just breeds a very fearful, disempowered mindset. And from this disempowered state of being is where people can justify and rationalize acts of, you know, heinous, despicable acts that people who are more aligned with their higher self and their divinity see as just like, how could they possibly do that? It's just so wrong. It's so obvious to you how hurtful and sucky that is. But it's apples and oranges. So do I believe in evil in the idea of what I just said? Yeah. Do I believe there's like the battle of good and evil, and people who are aligned with their higher self and their divinity are good, and this is evil, and we must fight against them, and I don't buy any of that. I see good and evil as part of the same thing. I see God, I see the one as all that is, all things. So nothing can be apart from all that is. But that's just my perspective. But I believe that's the perspective that we're all kind of coming to. Initially, as you start to awaken, you're easily triggered by negativity. But eventually there comes more of an acceptance of it. And you see a role in it. Because people learn from your Hitlers and your like Illuminati, like all that. People learn from it. It's an experience that obviously our souls chose to come and have for probably just for the sake of having it. Why limit ourselves to only good, airy, fairy, I'm floating in the clouds, praising love and light? That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's obviously awesome. But as an eternal soul, we're probably bored and say, hey, let's challenge ourselves. Let's pinch ourselves off from the one and see what happens. Let's see how we conduct ourselves. Well, apparently, we see what happens, and now we're going back to the light. We don't like this experience anymore as a human collective, so we're getting the fuck out of Dodge. And I did ask the question. I really don't know much about this. I quickly Googled it, but I can give you my perspective on it. The idea of other kin, which from my limited understanding, based on what I just saw, it just has to do with people who identify with like animals and whatnot. Like the person who asked me, she identifies with like being a mermaid. And most people do, oh really, a mermaid? Well, that's crazy. I don't believe so. I believe that we are living in a time, and it's going to be exciting to see. This will be kind of like I can't help but take pleasure in my own selfish sense to watch people's reactions when the reality of how things are really starts to kind of come at them. Because we have been living in a very narrow-minded state of being, a very narrow confine of what's normal and what's acceptable. I mean, we're living in a time where like homosexuality is like, there's still tons of people who like, it's wrong, it's a sin, it's fucking, you're sick. That's like, in my opinion, like barbaric ignorance. And these people these other kin, I believe, are just another example of just how diverse we really are as a soul. We aren't limited. Many of us have probably been dogs and other wild, unimaginable creatures in other lifetimes. Why not? Why? You really think this entire vast universe and existence is full of only like people, human beings? No. You're in for a rude awakening if that's what you think. There's a lot more. We are living in like a veil, in a very limited experience of it, but that's all changing. We're all kind of coming out of it. So I don't know anything more about that, but I just see that as another example of souls coming in to show the whole rigid mentality that humanity collectively embodies a different way, that just to kind of broaden their horizons and open them up. And in this opening, it'll allow for compassion and love and understanding to kind of flow in. I think there's going to be so much out there, so many diverse things, and that's why we're seeing like a increase in the contrast in these the religious battles and whatnot. Because it's going to get to a point, in my opinion, in my projection, that people will have no choice but to just relax and accept.